So good morning, everyone. And my name is Dorit Avni. I'm the coordinator of Algae-based and the head of Biocompounds and Immune Disease Group at Migal. And on behalf of Algae-based, I would like to welcome you to this webinar that today will focus on the algae-based opportunities to be functional food. And I would like also to thank the organization committee of this webinar, which includes Dr. Melanie Obremier. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing last names fully correctly. She is the Dissemination and Communication Manager of Algae-based. Dr. Maria Heiss from Teagasc and Dr. Benoit Quéguineur, they will be our experts for the functional food. They are the one that developing functional food under the Algae-based consortium, and they will be in the panel discussion later on. So welcome everyone. Today's webinar is divided into two sections. The first section, we will give you I will present a brief overview about Algae-based, and then we have these invited speakers that will give you a bit different angles and aspects about functional food and algae-based, of course. And the second part will be a panel discussion. So the questions that you have, please write them to us on the chat. There will be no questions during the presentation. After only, we will address them in the second part of the panel discussion. So a brief overview for the Algae-based that aims to explore the algae treasure benefits from the ocean to get to the bedside, either as pharma or your healthy plate, either as functional food. And today we'll focus on the functional food aspect. We would like, our goal is to exploit and provide and proving that the health potential of algae can prevent and treat inflammation and pain in general, but we are focusing on a certain chronic disease that it's inflammatory bowel disease called also IBD, by developing functional food and medication against this pain, inflammation, and IBD. When we introducing algae-based products to the market, there are two main aspects or you can find products in the market. Most probably you will find the one that uses algae as an alternative source for protein. And we have here representative Dr. Jean-Paul Caduret that will present a success story of Algama, for example. And another project that it was led by Irta and Dr. Fabio Faneri will present you the ProFuture for that. And this means that it's a product that aims to feed you in a sustainable way or to give you nutrition elements like mineral and vitamins. But it's not any of those products are not pretending to claim any health claims on the product itself. Direct health claims that it will mitigate your immune system and so on. On the other end, you can barely can find, if any, very few functional food by definition that also has a health claim, which we are, as the project Algae-based is aiming for. And both of them have their challenges and their opportunities. And also for the one that are trying to exploit algae for alternative source for proteins, if it's not chlorella or spirulina, they need to follow regulation steps. And we have an expert on that, Dr. Claire O'Donovan, that will share her insights about that. And they need to, if it's a novel algae, they need to follow novel food regulation. On the other hand, we have the functional food that aims to promote your health and overall boosting your immune system or gut health or mitigating the imbalance of microbiome, even if you are not having any chronic inflammation, but you have like a stressful life or you're not eating properly, it could happen to each and every one of us. So in that sense, we are trying to see whether a consumption of a daily consumption of such as functional foods can support our immune system, support our physiology, and to prevent such an event of chronic disease. But to doing that, we need to look closely on the definition of functional food, because they are defined as food or dietary supplements that provide us health benefits or an additional function beyond this basic nutrition when they consumed on regular basis, and they have an effective level. And this needs to be proven by research and health documented, and of course follow any regulation steps needed in order to claim it. So in Algae for IBD, as I said, we are aiming to take this advantage of the algae bioactivities, different antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, how they can mitigate or rebalance the microbiome and so on, to address inflammatory bowel disease. That is now, at the current state, we have 6.8 million, but it's chronic patients. So it's their usage of medication is ongoing year-round, and it's in a raising incidence. Not only that, the last decade we have concerned about the age. It used to be between 15 till 60, 70, but now we can see pediatric IBD, and we are seeing incidence of young kids as age of 3 already having those kinds of symptoms. It affects not only themselves, it makes them not going to work, to school, to go to the hospital very frequently, and they don't have an effective cure. And this kind of disease, or chronic disease, I have to say, it has a vicious loop, because it has multiple aspects that combines it into their peaks of inflammation, and then it's like the immune system that it's imbalance that damages the epithelial cells and the gut health, and then the microbiome that as a consequence of that is getting as an imbalance, and it's the oxidative stress is rising, so it's a vicious loop in a multiple aspect disease. So in Algae for IBD Consortium, we designed it as a multidisciplinary approach that we are tackling the different aspects, the microbiome with the prebiotic, the immune system and the inflammation response as anti-inflammatory, the oxidative stress, and even antibiotics. So we want to tackle it as a holistic approach. And to do so, we have this multidisciplinary team that consists of 21 different partners that are coming from the algae industry, the hospital IBD centers, immunologists and biochemists, food developers, and pharma as well. And to do so, we have also addressed it, the pipeline as a full preclinical setting that we can touch based on each aspect to prove it. So we have an Algae for IBD bank that consists of 150 strains. We are extracting them, and then once it's been extracted, we have a multiple platform to address those aspects, either the immune system with the inflammatory response, we have antioxidants, we have microbiome testing and the biodigestibility testing, and this platform gives us a quick go, no go. And then we have the second step of this preclinical development, which is going through the IBD preclinical mice model and an ex vivo that relates on the IBD patients. Biopsies that are from the age of 3 till the age of 60. And with these positive hits, which we are already have some insights, we have our team that it's our work package, entire work package that is dedicated to develop functional food that will address, like I said, those kinds of aspects. And those team leaders are Dr. Benoit Quéguineur from Algaia and Dr. Maria Heiss from Teagasc, that in that sense, when we developed the consortium and the project, we thought about the basic, from basic food products that we can reach every household, and it could be consumed daily as a food product, also addressing the different age. So for kids, for example, gummy bears, and for adults, maybe yogurt or biscuit and so on. So they are designing different food products to address the entire population. And beside the food product, we also have food supplements. And they will be part of our panel discussion, our experts, which they will address those aspects in the panel discussion. So this holistic approach that we have to tackle inflammation and IBD is taking into account all of the sectors, meaning the patients, the general population, which none of us wants to get to IBD situation, the algae industry, the food industry, and of course, the Ministry of Health in each one of our countries, that we want to reduce the burden, the economic burden and hospitalization. So we believe that with those kind of products that at the end will reach the consumers, and for the consumers, of course, we not only need to follow the regulatory steps, we also need them to be convinced that it's helpful, but it's also tasty. So acceptance and sensory wise, and how the public can embrace it without, I don't think we need to aim for them to embrace it, but with no much of a change of their consumption habits. Because we already know that if we need a huge change, a huge transformation, it's not easy for the consumer. And we have an expert for that will touch base on that, Dr. Pernilla Sandvik from University of Uppsala. While saying all of this, I would like to thank you again for joining us. And we will start with the first speaker. And the first speaker will be Jean-Paul Cadoret that is the CFO of Algama and also the Vice President of EABA. Jean-Paul, I will stop share and you can share your screen, please.
Normally you see my screen.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation. Hi, everybody. This is 130 attendees. That's not bad for a webinar. I will remove this. So I'm here to talk about, and I have 10 minutes to talk about food and algae and food, and to tell you the story of Algama. Very quick. I will still start with algae, and this is my hat of EABA, European Association, because it's for institutions. It's not always obvious what is an algae. So there are two ways to come back what is an algae. There is first a position paper that was published now in 2019 with a group of experts that decided to give this position paper whoever it needs that. And then there is now a European standard on what is an algae. We can disagree with this, and very often the people disagree with that, but this is a standard to say what is an algae, and this has a name. You can see that on the bottom of my slide. Very quick now, we are on the age of using the plants and the algae in food. Why future of plant-based is algae? Because there are so many different algae and there are so many different biologies that you can find what you look for a lot of reasons, but I'm not going to go through all of that because some of you probably know that exactly the same as me. But you can find a lot of proteins. So Algama is playing with the amino acid balance. We're also very good work on digestibility. I will come back to the food after the problems of the food. You can find unsaturated fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids. We can play with the clean and sustainability, but in a way, I'm in a group that knows the algae. So I will not go further on this slide, just to say that we keep saying that we have a chance of having the algae for the food. In Europe, we're very constrained with the food list and the novel food story, which impairs the development of a lot of companies. Algama very quick. Algama is now 10 years more than 10 years old. We raised in total 28 million. We have 38 patents. We're more than 30 people. 2/3 of these people are in the R&D group, and 2/3 of this R&D group are food engineers. We're based in Paris. We have an office in New York, and we're in Belgium. We're building a biorefinery, or at least an industrial structure in Belgium, and you saw all these goals and all these stories. Algama chose to 4 years ago, 5 years ago, to go further and to focus on the eggs, for one reason that you see here. This is a fantastic market. There will be in Europe a ban for a chicken inside, so we will have to put all the chickens in Europe outside, which we cannot, in a way. You have also countries where you cannot raise chicken, or you cannot import eggs, or you cannot store eggs. So anyway, there is a very good place, and I didn't mention the vegan market. There is a place for the egg replacement, which is our riding horse for the moment. And we created a line of products that are called Tamalga. We adapted this Tamalga sometimes for various applications. So you have to see that Tamalga is not an egg replacer in the sense that it's not an algae that replaces an egg. It's not possible to find an algae that will be so powerful to replace the egg, but this is an ingredient. Algae are a part of it, but we have also plants and other products. We keep trying, and we keep working to lower the numbers of ingredients in this Tamalga. So we're able to replace eggs you will see usually in the bakery. We had a very strong program on seafood, replacement of tuna and salmon, caviar, and so on. But this was externalized in that sense that we created a spin-off, and this is now, it belongs to our spin-off called Olala. So you read it when I was talking. It has been a long work because, funny enough, you have a lot of colleagues, sometimes some friends also. You just take an algae and you bring the algae, and I make you a mayonnaise, and I make you a cookie, and I make you a pancake. At Algama were so bad that it took us 4 or 5 years to really develop these ingredients, and to be sure that you answer what you want to do with if it's a cold emulsion, you see an omelette, you see soft cake, a crepe, a daff. So there is so many applications. And here I'm talking only about the functionalities that are physical functionalities, but we bring also the biological functionalities. So this is a lot of work to decide what are you going to make and how. And we developed 4 Tamalga for the moment, and we're in the process to develop all. So our Tamalga dressing, for example, we play with the plant-based. We play in the fact that 50% less fat, no cholesterol, oral, no GMO, texture, versatile. Very important, two very important things. You can do whatever you want with algae. If it's not good and if it's not affordable, anyway, you will not reach any market. So it had to be a real replacement that you don't, in a way, the best egg replacer will be the one that you don't see. So this was the point, and that our replacer is able to be used without any you cannot see it. And we're now lower in prices because the prices of the eggs are exploding worldwide, and Tamalga stays in the very reasonable and affordable range. And I think I will continue. So here is the range of Tamalga. We continue to develop. We have to adapt because this is not the same if you want to make a viennoiserie, brioche buns, or a cream, or a brownie, or a waffle. Mayonnaise exists already, but it's not in this slide. And we're developing, adapting very often to a demand of some of our clients. So this is on the shelf, but we're developing 2 or 3, 4. It's not enough to do that in the lab. And again, with my very good friends and colleagues, sometimes they think that at the lab you can make whatever you want. You just make that the Sunday afternoon with your kids, and with an algae you make an egg replacer. It has been a lot of work. You see Lodi from the team, a lot of work in collaboration with industry, with clients, to go to make the real test at the industrial level. This was before. This was, I don't remember. This was the brownies here, and now you have here some cakes, some cookies. So you see that it has been a long way to be able to launch our product, and in a way to adapt to the questions of our clients. Here, the current test, for example, the waffles, you see the difference in some colors. You can see the Madeleine is bluffing. The Madeleine is really bluffing, and you can't see the difference, which is true for the brioche. But the Madeleine, I like it. It's really bluffing. Current test with the donuts. You see here the IRA, but also going at the industrial level. And here are all the products that Algama developed or is going to develop again, but in a way, for a moment, we had to focus. Algama was developed with the Phycocyanine drink here, Spring Wave, and it was known at the beginning with that. The milk is going to be redeveloped. It tests very well. And we had a success, but with other problems that were not biological. Algama is also known for his mayonnaise, and you see here, as I told you, the salmon, and we have also some patents on chocolates. Very quick about the EABA, because this is, and I'm almost done. I'm sure you are looking at your clock, and I'm almost done. Don't worry. And very quick about the EABA, because you invited me as EABA Vice President, as CSO of Algama. So each time I have to make my advertising. If you are not a member of the European Algae Biomass Association, here you have the president, me as one of the 3 vice presidents, the general manager, Vitor. And please, if you don't know, which is not normal, there is our annual conference, and this year is in Athens. We gather now, since 3 years, 450 attendees with 100 talks, so and 210 posters. So this is 3.5 days this year. Please, it's too late for the abstracts, but it's time to register and to meet all of you there. I think I'm done. Very quick who I am, and this is my last one. I'm working in the algae since more than 35, actually. I'm coquette here. I'm a Chief Scientific Officer of Algama, Vice President of EABA, co-founder of the Ioso production company, making pharmaceutical compounds in algae, in GMOs. I have been 26 years, at Ifremer, where I was head of the lab and head of the unit, and I've been 5 years the managing director of Currency, and I have 80 publications and probably 15 patents now. Here you are.
Thank you so much, and I will join your recommendation to join EABA annual part of the Algae Europe event, because it's amazing and it's really knowledgeable. So I will recommend all of you to join it. And I have to say that it's really challenging also to provide something that will be looks good, tasty, and bioactive. And I have to say that Maria Heiss and Benoit Quéguineur are doing in our project is doing hard work. But we have already something that I can recommend in our last event that will be in Teagasc in Ireland. So please follow our website. You have something to look forward, fairy cakes for sure. So next will be Dr. Mary Jane Falrod from Fermentalg, because I think this is another aspect of really bioactive algae-based product that is approved in the market, not as one that are addressing the protein or techno-functionality to replace a kind of the food per se, but bioactive. So please share with us your story. You are muted.
Yes, hello. I'm having difficulties in sharing because I tried to share this morning and it worked. Just a sec. Yeah, it's not, if you can share my presentation that I sent you, it would be easier, because somehow this morning, it's, yeah, super. Okay, let's go, because the time is really short. Okay, so I've taken a systemic approach, but some of the slides I may skip because they may not be exactly on the topic. I'll start by presenting myself. I'm currently Marketing and Product Management Director at Fermentalg for nearly 5 years. And I have also nearly more than 30 years of experience in health and nutrition, B2B ingredients in the companies that you see here. And so my anchor is really in applications, formulations of ingredients, applications, and benefits for the applications. So I like to say that my credo is added values through vision and agility. Next slide, please. So Fermentalg, I don't know, I'm sure you all know Fermentalg. We're a French biotech company specialized in microalgae, precision fermentation of microalgae and extraction of actives and ingredients for health and nutrition markets. So our mission is to reveal the potential of marine microorganisms with natural solutions for plant, animal, human, and the planet. Next slide, please. We offer a notion of solution to enhance health and wellness, and we have mainly two microalgae we're leveraging on, Schizochytrium, which you all know, which we, from there we have our DHA range, highly naturally concentrated in DHA, which we call Origins. This is our range for all the markets, and I'll come back to that. And then we have Galdea sulfuraria with a very specific Phycocyanine, which is acid stable. And we have a partnership with Givaudan, we'll come back to that, for the color in food and acid foods. And we've leveraged on this for nutraceuticals, and I'll explain how. And we're currently investigating how to use, and we've patented in cosmetics. Okay, so next slide, please. So when developing a product, the key is to answer a market need, and if possible, the most specific possible, as Jean-Claude showed, because Jean-Paul, sorry, because if you just say feed the planet with proteins, that doesn't work. It's nice, but you have to be the most specific possible and secure that you have the right unique selling points of this product. So I'll illustrate with two, the DHA and Phycocyanine in the next slide. So our range of Origin Alga omega-3 answers consumers and customer needs. Just a sec. It's known that 80% of the global population do not consume enough omega-3s. Where we're very lucky with DHA and omega-3, and this is very rare for dietary supplements and functional food, DHA has claims and EFSA claims. Notably, it contributes to maintain normal brain function and normal vision. And it's highly recommended at more than 300 milligrams for pregnant women, and it's mandatory in infant formulations for babies when you cannot breastfeed. So this, compared to what we're going to talk about Phycocyanine or what you're working on, you have the claims, so it's much easier. And I'll compare this with the Phycocyanine. Okay, people are looking for increasing their omega-3, and then we have a sustainability issue that is not, we're never going to replace all the omega-3s from fish oil, but there's clearly an issue in the future in terms of the overfishing and the population. So alternatives to algae will be a solution and a sustainable solution. So our DHA is natural and sustainable, and we're developing all the ways to go in, not only the dietary supplements, which is the classical way to eat the omega-3, and there you only have the health claim and you know how to use it in dietary supplements. When you start going into pet food, into infant formula, that's already mastered, but into pet food or functional food, you add another challenge, is the way that you use the product and the way you're going to formulate your DHA, because as soon as it touches the air, it oxidates. So that's what we're working currently on formulations of our products, emulsions and powders, and then the way to use these products in the functional food. And I liked your introduction on the difference between functional food, the content claim, and which is the easiest, and then where you really need the claims and the studies to have them approved. So next slide, please. So our Phycocyanine from Algaia sulfura strain, which is a proprietary strain, answers the following consumer and customer needs. So natural, for colors is critical. I haven't put all the market figures here. Sustainability, and I remind Fermental has chosen the fermentation process to heterotrophic to obtain the biomass, which we believe is the much more cost efficient, because when we didn't talk about this, but microalgae and the actives, ingredients or biomass, if you don't have the cost in use, you can have all the benefits, you're dead before you start. So we've got the proven functionality and the uniqueness of this Phycocyanine in the beverage. And then we've capitalized on positioning this Phycocyanine as a 3-in-1 antioxidant. We've demonstrated different things, that it was able to reduce the radical scavenging effect as much as olive oil. We've demonstrated a few. We've demonstrated the bioavailability increase after digestion, so we've shown that it doesn't need to be protected. We've demonstrated a threefold SOD versus the competition. So we've demonstrated a number of facts to position ourselves versus the current Phycocyanine, but we haven't done a clinical study to get the right claims if we needed a certain targeted health arena. And we're looking into anti-aging and anti-imperfection and makeup, and slowly patenting this. So the message here is that you have your product, and then you need to investigate the functionality of your product and measure it, and then know how to use it in the application. So next slide, please. I will skip quickly. Well, we can go on the IP. I've got two messages. Next slide. The key here is either you have a crowded IP and you work around the FTO, either you have a novel a novel ingredient that has a novel functionality, and you can patent. So this is really the two differences with Phycocyanine and DHA. And the recommendation is to patent applications from the process to application. No use to have a process patent. It's the application and the functionality that needs to be patented. And that's one of our key success factors. We patented very early the stability in acid applications. Next slide. Regulatory, I'll go quickly, but there's also two differences between our products. One, with the DHA from Schizochytrium, DSM had paved the way for us. So the obtention of the different regulatory points were much easier. And we systematically went from dietary supplements to food, to infant food, to pet food. So we're moving and we are targeting the different markets, but it's much easier and it's very fast. Whereas when you have a novel ingredient, despite that Phycocyanine is exactly very, very, very close to the Phycocyanine from spirulina, that didn't undergo an EFSA approval because it was used before 1993. Well, we still have the files pending, and the different companies agree, and very big companies agree that EFSA is definitely getting a bit too bound to procedures and training innovation by asking several questions on security of things that have already been proven. FDA is much more reactive, and there's two different ways two different strategies on FDA and Europe. FDA gives the responsibility to the company that is going to use the ingredients, whereas EFSA takes all the responsibility. So it explains the differences of approaches. Nevertheless, FDA currently is overloaded with files due to administrative overloads from COVID. So two different approaches. And next slide. ESG, I will skip just to say that we believe, and we did very early, our LCA in order to properly communicate on our results and have factual results and be able to define a roadmap to improve our ESG. Should it be on the process? Should it be on the strain? Should it be on valorization of the co-products? It's an extremely time-consuming process, and I recommend to outsource it. So to start with a simplified LCA, and only when you're scaled up to do a complete one. Next slide, please.
We will need to have your key messages now, because we need to move on.
So key messages are on the functionality here, where I'm comparing Phycocyanine with DHA, and I'm comparing in food, and I'm comparing in dietary supplements. So if we start with in food, in color, we benefited from the partnership with Givaudan. We developed the process and the product, and Givaudan developed the know-how on the formulation in applications, and we met at the formulation of the product, how to make it more stable. Whereas in DHA, as I said, the challenge in functional food is to stop it, prevent it from oxidation. So we're developing, and we've already developed, powders, emulsions, and also the know-how, application know-how, how to use them in gummies, for example, or any other type of applications. In nutraceuticals, you don't have this formulation issue because you're straight away putting it into capsules, but you need the clinical study. So DHA benefits from the clinical study. Phycocyanine that we have doesn't. So we chose to develop proprietary data. So I will finish there if I've gone over my time. My key message is this type of development is really an overall systemic approach with the product at the center.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we will and you will be able to answer questions that are coming from the audience in the next part. So we will move for the next speaker, that is Dr. Fabio Fanari, that from IRTA was the coordinator of ProFuture, which is all about how to exploit algae for alternative protein in a EU-funded project that ended a year ago, and he can share with us all about the aspects and challenges or success product that they had regarding that. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me and see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
So thank you. Today, as you already said, I'm here to talk about our experience with microalgae food reformulation. I work for IRTA, which deals with agri-food research and technology. We are a research center. And in 2019, we started this journey of coordinating ProFuture project, an Horizon 2020 funded project that the aim was to scale up the microalgae production and prepare the market uptake of reformulated microalgae food and feed. We work with several foods, starting from pasta to vegetable creams till sport drinks and bars. Before entering in the heart of the presentation and showing you the challenges that we had with the food reformulation, I would like to introduce you the ingredients that are available for this. When we talk about algae, you know that we have thousands and thousands of species in nature. Here I reported just the most known ones among the ones that are approved from EU legislation. Although we have several alternatives, usually the species that we considered for reformulation are spirulina and chlorella. For legislation problems, techno-functional problems, and also because the other are more used for other application, or their production is not enough to supply an eventual food industry sector. Why chlorella and spirulina are so interesting? For their protein content, of course. In this case, we are not talking exactly about reformulation of functional food, but more about reformulation of nutritional food. So the aim was to work with food that can reach the market and not supplement or, let's say, functional food with health claims. But anyway, is not enough to say that this ingredient is interesting for the protein content, because we have alternative ingredients like the vegetal proteins that show, let's say, better characteristic, and especially they are cheaper, very cheaper compared to microalgae. So I think if we want to valorize microalgae, we should offer more to the food industry, because if we don't offer more, food industry won't go to these ingredients. And one strategy, of course, as was already discussed also in the previous presentation, could be to valorize other bioactive compounds that are present in these ingredients. Like, for example, one that we work with was the vitamin B12, which is very important for people that follow a vegan or vegetarian diet. And in this case, we worked in the specific case of energy bars that with an inclusion of microalgae from 2.5 to 5% can reach this claim and be labeled as high in vitamin B12. This could be an added value that can move the industry or let's say, focus the attention to these ingredients for food reformulation. Anyway, the challenge to have these claims and to, let's say, give added value to these ingredients are several. One of these is the color. We have several. We can work with several ingredients from algae with different coloration, but let's say especially the green and yellow coloration are tricky when we want to reformulate food, because they can cause, let's say, rejection from the consumers. In this case, what we can do is try to focus on products that, depending on the ingredient, can adapt more, can adapt better or worse to the inclusion of microalgae. For example, here you can see several vegetable creams reformulated with microalgae. In this case, we have this green color, so also working with different ingredients, we don't affect so much this color, and this is a good product to be reformulated in order to don't, let's say, compromise the consumer acceptance. In other cases, for example, again, for the case of energy bars, especially the green coloration could cause, let's say, refuse from the consumers. Another limitation is, of course, the organoleptic properties. Microalgae show really strong musty and fishy flavors, and also a powdery consistency that are limitation when we go to the reformulation. Usually 5%, maximum 10% are the maximum concentration that allow us to formulate let's say, a pleasant food. But we have seen that there are, depending on the food that we have targeted, we can play with these different ingredients. And for example, spirulina is very good with sweet products because it shows candy and fresh tastes that they couple very well with the sweet products. Chlorella is more neutral, especially, let's say, the not green strains. It presents some dry grass notes that can be useful, for example, to reformulate some milk analogs, but it has the problem of the powdery consistency that already in some foods like 2-4% is compromising the texture. So we have space to work, let's say, to play and adjust color and tastes. I think the major problem is about technofunctional properties, because microalgae have good water holding capacity. They have good emulsifying properties. They help, for example, to control the phenomenon of syneresis in, let's say, semi-solid foods. But they have low solubility. So again, 5-10% maximum is the limit of solubility of the dried biomass ingredients. Good points are the stability at acid pH of the proteins. And talking about the species spirulina is good in increasing viscosity, could be extruded. But again, it presents this dark green color that if we want to create an analog of a known food, could be an obstacle. Maybe we can think about new concept of food. And finally, chlorella have the problems of no gelling capacity. We cannot use it for formulation of firm gels. Here you can see a comparison between a gel, let's say, created with pea proteins, and in the same condition, a gel created with chlorella. You can see that as chlorella is not gelling, is forming an emulsion, but it is not a gel. So sorry, I was a brief presentation. I hope I focused the attention on the main challenges. And if you want more information, you can check our website. And also, I would like to invite you to check our new project where we are involved, which is called Locality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabio, because those aspects are mutual for either if you want to use algae as an ingredient for protein or anything else without health claim, and the same goes if you want to include it with health claims. Still, the techno-functionality to which product you need, it's a big challenge that you need to address and to know. Moreover, and this will bring me to the next speaker, the challenges of the regulation, because if it's not spirulina or chlorella or any seaweed that is approved, and you want to introduce a new one that can be a better one for techno-functionality or replacement, without health claims, you need a regulation because it's novel food, and even more steps, even more regulation if you want, as Mary Jane showed us, if you want to have a health claims that will be a real functional food with relevant health claims. So now the next speaker will be Dr. Claire O'Donovan, which is from the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, that will shed light on this aspect. So the floor is yours. Thanks.
Great. Just before I start, can I just check you can see my first slide is okay?
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you, Dorit, and thanks so much to Maria and Melanie for the invitation this morning. My name, as Dorit said, is Claire O'Donovan. I'm the Manager in Public Health Nutrition in the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, so very much working on nutrition legislation, but previously I worked a lot in research, and I'm a dietitian as background, so really interested in this topic, and I'm delighted to be here, and just to learn what exciting research is happening in this area. So I'm going to talk today about nutrition and health claims and how specifically to comply with 1924-2006. So I'll just move the slides on here. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the relevant legislation in this area. There's a few pieces that are, I suppose, relevant, and then to do a deep dive into Regulation 1924-2006. I'll define nutrition and health claims, so what do we mean by them, and just some general principles when you're putting nutrition and health claims on your foods, which you need to comply with. I'll speak about the EU register and also then about the health claim applications. So the first piece of legislation to be aware of with regard to fortified foods is Regulation 1925-2006. So this allows the addition of vitamins, minerals, and certain other substances to foods and food supplements. So this sets out, the forms of vitamins and minerals you're allowed to put in, but also which substances, and it sets out what particular substances actually aren't permitted in these supplements and in foods as well. So that's the first important piece of legislation. We also then have Directive 2002/46 EC. So this is the food supplements legislation, and this sets out, the labeling requirements if you're making a food supplement that you have to adhere to, and other various things you need to adhere to with regard to food supplements. And in Ireland, we also have an ESCI, and in every European country there it would be transposed into particular national law. So the ESCI is the Irish version of that. So then Regulation 1924-2006. So this is really the legislation with regard to nutrition and health claims, and this sets out what is permitted and how to comply with the legislation. And again, we have an SI in Ireland with regard to nutrition and health claims. So the first important thing to remember, I suppose the background to this legislation is any claim that is made on a food label, it needs to be clear, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be substantiated. So it should be based on good science. And this is to enable consumers to make informed choices. So that's kind of the background to this particular piece of legislation. It's also important to remember that anything really that isn't mandatory on a food label could be considered as a claim. Okay. And so again, it's for the benefit of the consumer. The consumer shouldn't be misled, and this is really the background to this particular piece of legislation. So just to define then nutrition and health claims, so what do we mean by them? So a nutrition claim means any claim which states, suggests or implies that a food has a particular beneficial nutritional properties. So that's a nutrition claim, whereas a health claim then is any claim which states, suggests or implies that there is a relationship exists between a food category or its constituent and health. Okay, so that's the two different claims that you can make on foods. And just to give you some examples of these then, so a nutrition claim would be a source of protein, whereas a kind of a similar health claim would be source of protein which contributes to the maintenance of muscle mass. So that's kind of the difference. And the same, you could say high in vitamin C would be your nutrition claim, whereas a health claim with regard to vitamin C would be high in vitamin C, which contributes to normal collagen formation for the normal function of bones. So the wording for health claims has been approved by EFSA. And I suppose just to draw your attention to the wording is very specific here. And there is a little bit of flexibility in terms of the wording, but you're not supposed to change the meaning of the wording, and that's really important. So you can strengthen a health claim. So for example, the one about protein there, if you said it contributes to the maintenance of stronger muscles or something like that, that wouldn't be permitted, because you'd be enhancing, or you'd be changing the meaning of the wording, but also you'd be strengthening the claim, which isn't permitted. So I suppose the advice really is to stick as closely as possible to the wording that's actually approved, and then if you are, just remember that you can't actually strengthen the meaning of the health claim. Now, so what can we consider as nutrition and health claims on labels? So obviously any text can be considered as a claim, so low fat, high in protein, etc. But also pictures are included here, so any images that are on products and can be interpreted as a health claim or a nutrition claim, and also symbols. So we often see things like heart symbols on products, or maybe a sunshine or a sun, and that might have connotations with regard to vitamin D. So when we're doing, I suppose, assessments on products, we would look at the label in totality, because symbols can have those connotations as well. And that's just very important. We're not just talking about text here. And also your product websites would be important. That would be considered under the nutrition and health claims legislation. So what you talk about the product on the websites is included, and also social media. So again, it's just broader than the food label, and sometimes people don't actually realize that. In the legislation, then, we have general principles and conditions for nutrition and health claims. So first of all, it has to comply with the conditions of use. So with each health claim and nutrition claim, there are certain conditions of use, and these have to be complied with. And if you search any of the nutrition and health claims, it'll lay out what the conditions of use are. So for example, it might be a particular piece of information that you have to give to the consumer, or it might be a certain amount of the vitamin or a mineral, etc. The claim has to be understood by the consumer, so that's fair enough. The consumer has to be able to understand the information that's being given to them, and you can't mislead the consumer. The substance has to be present or absent in an effective amount. So if you say it's low in fat, it has to be the right amount. It has to be lower. There's a particular level it has to be below. So that's very important. And again, this is looking at the conditions of use. And also it has to refer to the food as ready for consumption. And again, this is so it's not misleading the consumer. It is as the product is consumed. Also, with regard to general principles and conditions, you can't give rise to doubt or fear for the consumer. You can't condone, not to condone excessive consumption. It can't be false or misleading. You can't suggest it prevents, cures, or treats disease, and that's really important, because then that would be considered a medicinal claim, which isn't permitted. And also, you can't imply that a balanced diet is inadequate. So they're kind of the general principles when you're putting nutrition and health claims on foods that food businesses are required to adhere to. So I mentioned then the health claims are approved by EFSA, and there's probably about 240 odd health claims that have been approved. But so every time there has been a health claim approved or actually reviewed by EFSA, it's updated on this register. So this is a really nice resource, because you can search to see what health claims have been approved, and then within that it'll tell you the conditions of use that are associated with the health claim or nutrition claim, but also it includes all the non-authorized health claims as well, and you can see the rationale why something wasn't approved. So it's a really nice resource. But if you are searching it, make sure, if you just want to see the approved health claims, that you put that search function onto the search requirements. So otherwise all of them will come up, both authorized and non-authorized. Okay, so as well as obviously there's approved health claims that are for use, but you can also put in a health claim application, and I think this is I suppose very relevant to this particular project. The process for health claim applications has recently changed. So EFSA have a new system, and it's very much it's an online system now. And they have updated their guidance in the last couple of years on how to prepare and present a health claim application. There's a lot of information on the EFSA website with regard to this. And this, I suppose the whole process had to change recently because of this transparency regulation that came in EFSA. And so they had to revise some of their procedures. If you're putting in a health claim application, it has to go through a competent authority. So in Ireland, it will be ourselves and the FSAI, and in other countries, there would be obviously the associated competent authority. But just within the health claim application, so what you need to put into the claim, and you need to say your proposed claim wording and the specific condition of use. So as I mentioned, is it for all the population? Is it for particular population groups, etc.? You need to include some information about the characteristics of the food constituent that's related to the health claim, information to allow characterization of the claimed effects. So EFSA just really want to understand, how the health claim is really justified. So all pertinent scientific data, and I suppose by that they mean unpublished and published. And again, this particular document goes into a lot more information, and the data then provided to substantiate a health claim should be of high quality as well. So that's really important. And yeah, as I said, there's a lot more information in this particular document. And then finally, just to conclude, just to tell you a little bit about some useful resources. So we have some information on our website which might be of interest. We have a very nice guidance note on using nutrition and health claims. And also in 2020, I just thought for the particular group that are meeting here today, you might be interested. We had done some, we put together a guidance on safety considerations of seaweed and seaweed derived foods. And this was done by the scientific committee. So it's not in relation to health claims, but it's more on the safety aspects of seaweed. Also, there's a lot of information on the Commission website, and also then EFSA have a lot of information as well.
Thank you so much, Claire, because it's giving us a very useful sources of information when we want to address functional food by functionality and not only enriched, or like you said, and the deviation or the different aspects, how to address that. It's totally different. And I think we need to be sure we are following the relevant steps, regulatory steps. And thank you for that. And last but not least, as we need all of this regulation and all of this techno-functionality, and to provide the functional food, we need at the end user, the consumer, to take it home, to consume it on a daily basis, and how to do it, if it's possible, and what is the barriers and challenges or the opportunities. We have our next speaker, Dr. Pernilla Sadwick from the University of Uppsala, which addresses the consumer acceptance. So thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. So I'm delighted to be here today. So in the next 10 minutes, I will focus on barriers to consumers' acceptance of algae-based food, and I will also share some insights from the SenseIsle project. And I'm starting with this somewhat boring, but also quite useful figure, because quality is a useful concept when theorizing about promoting new healthy and sustainable food. And in my previous work, I developed a figure you see here. It illustrates the relationship between objective and subjective food quality among consumers, industry, and authorities. At the center is the food with health potential, and within our context here, this is algae. The top of the pyramid represents subjective quality, which is how consumers perceive the food. This includes factors like taste perception and health-related aspects of algae, and we need to consider how consumers perceive and view the product. And additionally, it's important to consider the personal experiences, cultural backgrounds, and situational factors that influence consumer perceptions. On the bottom left, we have the food industry, which includes producers, retailers, and food service providers. The industry is responsible for making algae-based products available and ensuring they meet certain quality standards. This involves product development, marketing, and distribution strategies that align with consumer preferences and regulations. On the bottom right, we have authorities such as national food agencies, which provide guidelines and regulations to ensure the safety and nutritional quality of food products that we just heard about in the previous speech. And they communicate with consumers through recommendations and with the industry through standards and regulations. So the arrows between these 3 points indicate the flow of information and influence. Authorities set regulations that the industry must follow, and they also provide information to consumers to guide their food choices. The industry in turn develops products based on consumer preferences and regulatory requirements, and consumers' feedback and purchasing behavior influence both industry practices and regulatory practices. So algae are a remarkable source of nutrition as well as a sustainable raw food material. Despite these benefits, several barriers can hinder consumer acceptance and consumption of algae-based products. And here I will talk about 4 issues. And the first one is availability and accessibility. So this refers to the presence of the product on the market and whether people can obtain and use the product. This includes factors like location, affordability, and ease of use. And today, cultivation of algae is increasing in Europe. Some food products are available, but there is indeed a gap where the last step of making healthy and tasty algae-based foods broadly available to consumers is lacking. Thus, the intake of algae in Europe is relatively low. Secondly, cultural food preferences and dietary habits play a significant role in food acceptance. Algae do not align with traditional diets in Europe, making it challenging to integrate these products into everyday meals. We need to find clever ways to incorporate these new foods into our meal patterns and also doing it perhaps in a wider context than only Asian-style dishes. Thirdly, perceived novelty and safety can be an issue. So algae-based foods are still relatively new to many consumers, leading to concerns about their safety and potential health effects. Safety is indeed an issue that needs consideration since levels of, for example, iodine and heavy metals can be high. This needs to be further explored within research and product development. Going back to the consumer, personality traits, such as the degree of food neophobia, also play a role whether consumers perceive the perceived novelty creates hesitation and resistance to adopting algae into their diet. And my 4th point relates to the sensory attributes of algae, which also was touched upon in a previous speech. And that relates to how we perceive, interpret, and value their sensory stimuli. And this is indeed one of the primary barriers for consumers. Although consumers often are positive about the idea of eating algae, they find the natural flavor of algae to be off-putting. And interestingly, if we investigate consumers' attitudes to insect-based food as a comparison, we see the opposite. They are often very negative initially to insect-based food, but when tasting, they often like it. So when tasted, they are often positive to the algae-based food, but when tasting, they more often dislike it. So that's a challenge. So sensory analysis play a crucial role in overcoming these barriers, and by understanding consumer preferences and optimizing the sensory attributes, we can make these products more appealing. And let me now share some insights from the SenseIsle project, which I lead. It's funded by the Swedish Research Council for Sustainable Development and includes partners from both academia and industry. The project aims to create a sensory knowledge foundation to increase the consumption of Swedish macroalgae. In this project, we try to address several of the aforementioned barriers, focusing on 3 species, the ones you see here in the pictures. And given the strong effect of cultural food preferences and dietary habits on acceptance, we decided to focus on developing foods for children, particularly food products that could be served in the free school meal provided for children in Sweden. This could potentially foster a new generation to be more accepting to the taste of algae. And we first focused on exploring how different cultivation techniques affect the sensory and nutritional properties of 3 species of seaweeds, such as cultivation in tanks or in the ocean, timing of harvest, and the addition of side streams to in-tank cultivation. Thereafter, we explored how post-harvest treatments such as blanching, drying, freezing, and milling affected the sensory and nutritional properties. And here you see some examples of how the results can look like. And we're looking for samples with mild taste and flavor, with high nutritional properties and safe levels of components such as iodine and heavy metals. And to evaluate the sensory properties, we have recruited and trained sensory panel to perform descriptive sensory analysis to give us these sensory profiles of the samples. And our findings indicate that the sensory profile of algae can be significantly enhanced through different cultivation and post-harvest processing techniques. Right now, in work package 3, we are teaming up with industry partners in the product development phase. We're striving for products with as much algae biomass as possible while still delivering a tasty, safe, and nutritious product. We're involving children in this process who will provide input through rapid sensory methods. And the final part of the study will include a cross-national consumer test with children in 4 European countries. Here we will include the products with the highest potential, and this study will contribute additional information regarding sensory drivers for liking and disliking algae-based products in Europe. And in conclusion, while algae hold great promise as a functional food ingredient or a food, a regular food, due to its nutritional benefits and sustainability, several barriers must be addressed to increase consumer acceptance. By focusing on availability, cultural integration, safety, and sensory attributes, we can develop algae-based foods that are both nutritious and enjoyable. And the Sensei project is making significant strides in this direction. And with continued innovation and collaboration, we can look forward to a future where algae plays a significant role in promoting healthier and more sustainable diets. So thank you all for your attention. I look forward to your questions and further discussions on this topic. And thank you also to all the collaborators within the Sensei project.
Thank you so much. This is a very important aspect because without addressing the sensory part, I don't think we can market it in any way, and we cannot get into the market and push it as much as we want to. So now moving forward to the second part of the panel discussion with our experts, I will just want to notify the audience with two things. One, that we will stay a bit longer. It will be in 15 minutes longer. And the second one, that I will start with Jean-Paul, as he needs to leave today at sharp 12 sharp. 12 sharp? 12 sharp, yes. So I will start with a question to you, Jean-Paul, and it is how do you think you can? This is a question from the audience. How do you think you can overcome the fishy smell of this microalgae, and what kind? If you can tell us, if it's not under I don't know if it's not still patent or something like that, what kind of microalgae you are using, and how do you produce them in a way that it will be consistent with the techno-functionality that you are looking in your product?
It's not a real secret anyway, because the best way for chlorella for the moment is to use a heterotrophically grown algae. They are white and they have almost no smell. So the most of the work we do is with the white chlorella or yellow chlorella, produced in fermenters. There are other ways that we're experimenting. In that case, they're either chemical or physical ways to remove the smell. The only problem is this is a down processing, so it increases the price.
So when you are marketing wise, how important you think the product should look similar to the origin in order to make the consumer buy it again and again and again, so it will be also profitable?
There is a choice by Algama to not sell algae, but sell an ingredient. So there is no point to play with. Sorry?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. This is a choice. So what we sell is a very good, functional, and not unaffordable ingredients, and then it happens that it has been made with an algae, but not only.
And I will ask you with both of your heads, as a CFO and EABA Vice President, what is the main barrier? Because we are way behind what we wanted to see the market embracing algae-based products. It doesn't matter if it's on ingredients or if it's with health benefits. Where is the bottleneck, the main bottleneck, to crack it and to open the market faster?
It's not easy to answer, because this is the point that always comes in any meeting about algae. There are several. The first one is probably stop overselling the algae. Use the algae only where they are interesting, and stop saying that we're going to save the world with the algae. This is probably the first one. The second is, we did all the mistake, and I say we because I'm a biologist. We thought that to make biomass was enough. No, biomass is not enough. The big story is, who is the client? If you want to sell them, you have to find the client, and you have to see that on the market, on the market view, which we didn't do. All we biologists a long time. So a lot of money from Europe went to produce, and the story is, it's okay to have stocks, but you have also to find your market, and everybody has to go around that. And then there is also anyway an awareness, which is true, to bring in Europe a kind of acceptance to the algae, but it's difficult to answer. So how could I say, so rough, because as I would ask you, what kind of market do you think you have for plants? So there are so many algae, and there are so many applications. Some of the applications are working very well as Algaia, but now there are markets to find, and if we want to find market, and I will finish here, we have to keep in mind that biomass is not sufficient. We have to work with our colleagues from sales, branding, marketing, prospection, regulation, and so on.
Okay, thank you. And I guess this leads me to a question for Maria Heiss, that because it's not only, like you said, it's a group of people to promote it into the market, but it's the techno functionality that needs to explore and would be to well incorporate it into the product. And so it's a question for Maria, is do you think that that techno functionality aspects and the best carrier formulation choice, what is this have to, how much effort do we need to put into that, or to consider it when we are developing algae-based, in order to get it to the consumer and convince him that it's good for him? And because you are in this specific project, you are all about preserving the bioactivities, how hard is it to choose the relevant one?
Yeah, so I think we can learn a lot in relation to the bioactivities and carriers from other sectors. So for example, prebiotics, and we have a focus on prebiotics in algae for IBD. We know that dairy foods are excellent carriers for prebiotics, and there's been several scientific publications, and indeed there are several dairy products with prebiotics as part of their formulation. So algal proteins, or algae rich in protein with similar technofunctional characteristics to dairy products, if we're making alternative vegan, for example, products would be ones that I would select when formulating. Yeah, and the second part of the question, I agree with Pernilla. Like, obviously the product that you develop has to be tasty. Somebody will have to eat it, you know what I mean? So it's important that the sensory attributes of your final product and the alga that you include in the final product match. So characteristics of algae that impart a pleasant mouthfeel or umami flavors and things like that for sensory or for savory type products would be carriers that we would hope to choose. But if you're looking at the bioactivity, the most important thing is that the carrier the carrier maintains the bioactivity of your active ingredient from alga. But as Jean-Paul mentioned, you need somebody to buy an end product as well. So maybe if you're not capable of formulating it into a functional food per se, maybe a better route to market would be through supplements or things like that, where the consumer, the impact of taste isn't as huge.
Yes, and it's a good point, and this is why we are trying to develop, we are aiming to develop in the project both. And it's another question that I have as a follow-up on this for you, Maria, is whether, because we are addressing different population, and different population have different palate and different acceptance of if it's children versus adults or teenage. So do you think we need also to customize when we are addressing these different population with our products?
Yes, of course. I think that's just a smart business approach, more than a scientific approach. When marketing to kids, like obviously you want a carrier that kids will want to consume, so maybe yogurts, like yogurt type products. And if we want a vegan market, we need to be able to develop a vegan type yogurt, be it from algal ingredients or other plant sources. And for adult markets, then obviously carriers are different. But I think some recent consumer insight work has said that, the main growth areas in functional foods are things like snack products, beverages, healthy beverages, and things like that. So they would have a broad appeal to the general population, but like when targeting kids, I guess, things like gummy bears maybe would be healthy gummy bears where you have a health benefit would be a good carrier.
And last question I see from the audience for you is how much you need to compromise the sensory-wise versus the functionality that you want to claim.
Well, that is a very big question. And I guess if you want to make money and if you want to sell product, you don't want to compromise sensory. But consumer research suggests that the population in general are more interested in their health. So, but I still believe that if something doesn't taste good, you're not going to go back and buy it again.
Totally
unless
agree with
it's
that.
an extremely bio.
And you don't want
and you see the results very quickly.
And you don't want your food to taste like a drug, right? You want to enjoy it on a daily basis.
No, exactly. So yeah,
that's a good point.
Sensory experience, exactly. So.
Yeah. So, Benoit, in follow-up to what Jean-Paul said about...
Dorit?
Yes, sorry, what?
I think Marie-Shane might want to expand on something earlier. She has her hand raised.
Yes, sorry. Yes, please go ahead. I didn't see it. Yes.
No problem. I just wanted to emphasize what Jean-Paul said on the main barriers for putting algae on the market. Stop selling algae for everything. I would say it's really important to use algae for what they're good at, and especially microalgae, which means very high added value actives or ingredients, because the second barrier is the cost. and to be competitive with other natural and sustainable ingredients. So always benchmark your functionality with what is possible elsewhere. So that's why you need to find the unique molecules that algae have and the other technologies don't have. A taste we've said 300 times, but I think this is critical. And the last one we've mentioned is regulation. Apart from spirulina and chlorella, there's not many, and the microalgae I'm talking about, there's not many other microalgae authorized. So you can have the fantastic molecule and you need to go for regulation. That's 4 years minimum in front of you. So barriers is cost also versus the other solutions that you're competing with.
And you know what?
Regulation.
Exactly. And this is you know what? This is you just gave me the opportunity to ask now a question that was addressed to Claire, is what is your opinion on soft claims on products? Because you mentioned, for example, that you can say it's rich, or like Fabio mentioned that it's rich with the B12 in there, because they use the rich spirulina, I don't know, or it's rich with vitamin C, versus the companies that make these soft claims, while other companies still need to go through the EFSA regulation to have the really health claims. So where is the balance? How can you?
Yeah, so I'm not really familiar with this idea of soft claims. I suppose anything that isn't mandatory on a label can be considered a claim, and you know, we that's the way we view the legislation. And if there was, we get, you know, if something comes to our attention, we'll review it. So I suppose if you see something that you don't think is in line with the legislation, it should be reported to the relevant authorities. But it's quite strict, but it might, like, yeah, I'm not really sure.
So what I think we mean, for example, if a company says that this is enriched with the spirulina, which give you a high content of vitamin B12, which is good for you because they are referring to B12 that is good for ABC. And then other ones, like, for example, that is functional with health claim, like mitigating anti-inflammation. You don't see much of those, like bread that will be good for a daily usage because it's mitigating anti-inflammation. So this is where I'm puzzled, how you can go away with that while you need to go a strict regulation to claim.
Yeah, well, I suppose I'd have to see the specific example, Dorit, to review it. But with regard to the health claims, you know, the process is quite strict, and I suppose the majority of them haven't been approved, and that's, you know, the criteria set out by EFSA, and I suppose it's the science that had been backing behind them. EFSA didn't feel was strong enough, was valid. Yeah.
And this is why we don't see much. It's still in the market, right?
Yeah.
Because company needs to, I guess, invest a lot of money and time to do the proper, like you said, the proper research, not just say, hey, we found that only on this aspect, it's okay.
Yeah, and just, I suppose, to say, it's always coming back to the consumer, that the consumer isn't misled. So if the science wasn't strong behind a claim, that would be misleading to the consumer, which wouldn't be fair, and also wouldn't be, you know, a fair market across Europe. But I might just come in and just say, prebiotics was mentioned, so that would be considered a health claim. Now, obviously, in a science webinar like this, there's no you know, it can be discussed, but just we do have information on that on our website, just that a prebiotic would be considered a health claim that wouldn't be approved. And also, just Maria had mentioned about gummy bears for children and things. So one thing I didn't go into was when the legislation was developed, the Commission had to have an article with regard to nutrient profiles, and the legislation was reviewed in recent years. So it went through a refit process, and that's published on the European Commission website. And one area that they said that they really need to go back and look at is this nutrient profile. So what that means is that the idea is that, again, you wouldn't be able to make a nutrition or a health claim on a product that wasn't considered healthy. But those nutrient profiles have never been set. So I'm just, when Maria had mentioned about the gummy bears, now this isn't coming, we don't have these nutrient profiles yet, but if they do come down the line, then the idea would be that, you know, you wouldn't be allowed to make a claim on a product that would be considered unhealthy. But yeah, so just, I suppose it's something to be aware of. I didn't want to go into the details in the 10 minutes, but I'm happy to share that opinion, that refit. But yeah, it hasn't moved at the Commission level yet.
That is very important point to look into the future. If EFSA as a regulatory body is even getting even a bit more strict in their view of how to keep the consumer healthier, I guess, right? And this is taking me to Fabio. From if you have because from your project, what will be your key element, your key message for on the consumer interest towards environment to convince that everyone wants to be sustainable versus healthy, but not still processed food. Where is the balance on that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. About this, I mean, we've worked also with consumer tests and interviews, and people are really enthusiastic about algae and their potential sustainable ingredient and their possible health, let's say, health claims and all the health aspects. But there is an inconsistency between what people say and then people do when they go to supermarket, because they see the difference in price, and at the end, I mean, we cannot judge people, but at the end they go to the lower price, and you need to justify the difference in price to convince the consumer. And if you don't have a real claim to put in your label, it's difficult to attract people. As we were saying, there are barriers and it's difficult to reach. You can put high protein, but there are a lot of products high in protein in the market. Maybe you can put vitamin B12, but you still have to convince that the food industry that your ingredients is valuable, because there are alternatives cheaper, and also there are problems with the bioavailability of this B12, the origin of this B12 is we don't know. Maybe it's not from algae, it's from contamination of the algae. I'm not algae expert, but I was involved in this topic. So the ingredient as B12, we don't know exactly where it comes from, and it's
so maybe it's not consistent. So maybe it's not consistent. Yes, it's also an issue.
We should valorize, as Marie-Jane said, we should valorize what is good in algae. So we should focus on which are the good aspects that can bring to the product. But the comparison is very, let's say, unfair, because we don't have the same volume of production of other types of protein, for example, and of other ingredients, and we have all these barriers from organoleptic point of view, technofunction, and etc.
Yes. So taking into account this cost-effective aspect, I think this will be a question for Benoit. With the development of the biorefinery concept and the need to make most of the biomass, this is how maybe you can make it more profitable, I guess. What will be the barriers to innovation in the food sector in the current status?
Yeah, it's the biorefinery concept indeed. It's something that you see very much in the dairy industry, and the dairy industry was mentioned several times during this webinar. It's not only the economical side, but in our case, it's also the environmental aspect of the biorefinery. But when we have an industry and we focus on one product, we also end up with co-products. In the case of seaweed, it could be lamina and fucoidans. Some of those molecules are available on the market. Some of them are approved by the EFSA, but they are approved with foreign origins, mainly coming from Asia and not so much coming from European species. And I think there are many barriers in the innovation, but the regulation and could also be more focused on local species when we are allowing molecules coming from foreign countries to be included in European products.
So this is also a question to Claire, maybe. Do you think there is a way or a safe way or any way to open it to or expedite or extend the sourcing of more European species so we can benefit from not only chlorella spirulina, because there is a limit of what chlorella and spirulina can give us as even food ingredients, or even seaweeds that are more maybe acceptable but still have some barriers. Do you think any way that at a regulatory level you can assist this industry somehow?
I think that's maybe a little bit out of my area, Dorit. I'm not sure what you're asking. I suppose, you know, you can source ingredients, but obviously if it's a novel food, it would have to be approved. And then if you're going for a health claim, you know, it still has to meet the EU rules, you know, if it comes from another source. So I'm not
sure. I think the way the EFSA even made February 2024, they opened the list for additional ones. Maybe Benoit, we need just to convince them by research, like European funded research project, that it's safe, that it's good for us, and then it will convince them easier to expand the list, I guess, and make it faster. But this is only upon, I think, the European Commission to invest more in those kind of aspects.
Maybe a fast track indeed to new species, with keeping in mind the consumer safety, of course, because we know that some of the molecular structure can differ from one seaweed to another.
So I think this is now a question I have for regarding the consumer acceptance. So Pernilla, if you can pinpoint what will be your view of how to, because you mentioned briefly the cultural and habits, dietary habits in general, that each one of us has, and I even don't speak about the subpopulation, teenage and kids versus adults and so on. What will be the best smart way? We as Algae4iBD, we thought about the basic products, bread, biscuit, yogurt, whatever, to reach them because everyone consumes them in a daily basis. What will be your view of that? How we can convince the consumer to consume it daily and not just rarely?
Yeah, and we've been thinking a lot about that in the Sensile project as well. Indeed, one way could be to add a smaller amount to more everyday food that would be eaten often. We strive to include 20% of macroalgae in a food that could be served in a school meal. So that's our way to trying to affect cultural and habits. So starting with the children and kids, I think, because what we learn to like at young age is what and are used to eating, that's what we eat. And of course, if you have a specific motivation to eat food with a health claim, and it might not be the tastiest food ever, but if you're motivated enough, you might continue eat it, and in the end you do like it, because exposure is, you know, the key to liking. But I think that trying to incorporate it in food for children is one way to go, to kind of increase the awareness of this new food in Europe, and then perhaps move forward to launching more types of products. But it's indeed a challenge. Yeah.
It is a challenge, and it's the next question that I think will follow that is for Marie-Jean is it worth the effort to produce a novel algae-based product? Because you already have like products like yours are very few that are EFSA approved. So is it worth it? Is the market is giving it back all of the efforts and the funds? And what do you see the next one that will be innovative to approach algae-based to the market?
Okay, it's a good question. Is it worth? We decided to go for the color additive for food with the Phycocyanine in Europe and FDA, which will also open us the opportunity to sell in dietary supplements in the US. We think it's worth it because we have seen the huge difference in application and in functionality in the beverage applications. So, and there's a real need in the US recently. California has banned artificial colors in foods. So there is a real need, and we believe it's worth it. It has to be really a specific ingredient and backed up with a partnership, such as we have with Givaudan, who really believe in it and know there is a market. Otherwise, it's a very long journey.
Yeah, it is. And okay, so this leads me to you, Benoit, as a company that is based on algae ingredients. What do you think should be the next market we should look at and open for the algae industry?
Well, for the algae industry, what we saw, we talked about it already also in the webinar, is to include algae in main products, in everyday products, and that will not only touch the local communities, coastal communities, but also the widespread consumer base. So this is really the challenge now for algae, is to widen the consumer base.
Yeah, so I have two more questions to ask. I think the first one is for Benoit and Marie-Jean. Marie-Jean, it's how expensive can the novel food application process be? And how long would it take? I think novel food, it's different than health claims. So maybe, Marie-Jean, you can share.
Yeah, it's totally. You have there's lots of different we applied for food color additive. You can then apply for a novel food ingredient if you want to use it in a dietary supplement or as an ingredient. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have the cost.
Okay, but I can tell you from what I know, it's not my expertise, that it's expensive. But this is why, as a company, you look into this process and you see where the markets will be, not only in Europe, globally, and where you aim to. I think Benoit will agree with me, right?
Yeah, and indeed, it is expensive for a company because you also have to rely on subcontractors.
Yes, agree.
But this is, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is something that we saw in nationally or European funded project, is to sometimes the subcontracting budget won't fit in the project, so you have to fund it yourself basically, and this is where it becomes really expensive to go into novel food.
And I think this is why you don't see much of this yet. We want to see more, but this is the restriction because the company per se by its own cannot do it. But this is why you have the European Commission to convince them that projects like ours, like Algae for IBD, or projects like Fabio showed, or like Pernilla showed, are worth investing in order to have a multidisciplinary consortium with different experts that can expedite the procedure with the budget in place, and can do it, and then to go to Claire, for example, and to provide her all the research proven data that she can easily approve it, or not easily, but it can reach to her. Yes, Mary.
Yeah, I think there's another part. You have the novel food, and then if you want to have the claims, you have to have the clinical studies, and not only one, a few, and then you submit them to EFSA, who reviews the potential claims. So that's why a lot of ingredients in nutraceuticals do not have a claim. They have a clinical study, 1, 2, or 3, and with that, they recommend. It's not a health. They don't have the health claims. That's where you start in the blood area, but that's how a lot of companies do. So
it's clear, right?
Different paths. It's another clinical study, depending on if it's an invasive or non-invasive clinical study, how many people you want to go. It can go from 100 to 300 €.
And it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of time also. And Claire, for sure, you just clarified it, that the differences between what we can claim and what is needed to address it, to get this authorization, right? It's not easy, and it's multiple steps you need to follow.
Yeah. So just to say, there's a difference between the novel food applications and the health claim application. So I have a colleague who's the expert in novel food, so I'm very happy to, if there is specific questions on that, I can pass them on. He's happy to reply.
Thank you so much. And last question for, I think it would be Pernilla. Do you think that parents of children will agree with the introduction of algae in a canteen meals if it's not a culturally accepted habit?
Well, it might be a challenge, and I know that parents can have many opinions on what is served in school meals, but in Sweden, at least, school meals, their content or nutritional value is regulated by authorities, so there needs to be nutritional, and they should also be tasty and accepted. But also a trend right now is making is making like if you have beef patties that you mix in. So you remove 50% of the beef, and then you add vegetables or other sources. So that could be also a way to sneak in the products, algae, into foods that are already accepted.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to thank you all for participating, to our experts for sharing their views and insights from their either company or research project. To all of you that came to listen to our webinar, I'm sure we can do at least 1 or 2 more, because it's really exciting subject that needs to, with multiple aspects and barriers, but the opportunities, and I feel at least, we really need to push it in the right way, of course, that the consumer at the end will get something that not only will fit them, but will have this added value that we can prevent any chronic condition because of either we are having a stressful life or we're not eating well. So thank you all for coming here, and I hope to see you in our last event in Ireland, by the way, that will be led by Teagasc with all the products that we can provide you in a tasty and healthy way. See you soon, and thank you so much.